Hello and welcome to another episode of Media MD, the podcast where each fortnight one of us prescribes a piece of media that the other host has somehow missed. My name is Reuben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Debold.
I actually forgot my own name for a second there. Anyway, let's keep going. We're professional. So this fortnight, I'm bringing you a piece of media, Elliot, which is a movie called Coherence from 2013.
Okay.
So you haven't heard of it or anything, right?
No, it doesn't sound familiar.
Okay. So before we get into this, I'm going to say this is probably my favorite movie of all time, I think.
Okay,
I think
2
I
out
can
of
say
10.
that. Yeah, so just when you watch it, be very careful what you give it a score out of 10. No, but if not my all-time favorite movie, at least my favorite science fiction movie of all time, which is probably my favorite genre, so maybe it's, I don't know. It's hard to quantify, but I'd say this is I regard this movie quite highly.
Okay.
So here's the pitch for this movie. A group of friends who have known each other for a long time gather for a dinner party and nothing at all weird happens and everything's great and it's a lovely time and nothing weird happens. That's my pitch.
Sounds delightful.
Yes, it's a delightful movie. No, there are weird things that happen, but I don't want to spoil it because this movie is very much driven by its plot. It's by its twists as well. There are a lot of twists and turns in this movie, and anything that I tell you is probably gonna reduce the value of the movie. In fact, even
don't watch the trailer or anything.
Don't watch the trailer. Don't even look at the poster on YouTube because I was googling this movie and I looked at the poster, and even the poster gives away too much of what this movie is about. To be honest.
Okay, so it's you want to go in blind, basically.
Completely blind, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't even tell you the name of the movie except that it's called Coherence, and that doesn't really tell you anything about anything, so I'm happy to do that. So since I can't tell you anything about the movie, it's going to be a bit of a weird pitching section, but what I am going to say is I'm just going to talk a bit about how they filmed the movie, because it's kind of cool, and how they filmed it will hopefully get you excited to watch it without actually spoiling it.
Okay.
The one spoiler I'm going to give you is that at some point, some weird stuff starts happening, right? At some point in the movie. But I'm not going to tell you any more than that.
That's already too much. It's ruined.
Yeah. So the movie starts out with these 8 friends having this dinner party at this one person's house. And they're kind of hanging out. And these are friends who you can tell kind of know each other. They're like a friend group, but they don't see each other all that often.
Okay.
And yeah. And so the way this movie was filmed is quite interesting. It's an indie movie, right? It was filmed for about $50,000, and I don't know. I don't really have a scale of how much movies cost, so I pulled up 2 other indie movies to scale it on. So Primer was an indie movie that was filmed for $7,000 and is kind of regarded as being really, really low budget.
Yeah.
And then Blair Witch Project was filmed for about $60,000, and that was just kind of some cameras in a forest. So you can imagine that $50,000 is quite cheap on the indie movie scale, right?
Yeah.
And so the way it was filmed was that the creators of the film basically just got 8 actors and over 5 days just got them to kind of interact a bunch. In fact, they didn't even have a script for most of it. It was basically just each day an actor would show up and the director would give them kind of a page of notes on what their characters' motivations were and what they were kind of doing that day. And then they would just film them improvising over the day.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, they edited it down a lot from that, but they did this to kind of, it kind of got these really genuine interactions between these people. And I was reading an interview and the director said that by day 2 or 3 of filming, they were having these really genuine interactions and they kind of felt as though they were friends just because they had been pretending to be these longtime friends for 2 or 3 days. So it kind of leads to this first third of the movie where they're just having this dinner party. It kind of leads to them really setting the stage for these characters and really getting you invested into these characters in a really interesting way. And it helps the payoff of what happens later be a lot more impactful for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much. I'm going to give you one more spoiler, I think, which is that there are like some small jump scary kind of moments later on in the movie. And things like that weren't in any of the pages of notes, and because there weren't any scripts or anything, the actors...
they get genuinely scared.
Yeah, so they got all these genuine reactions. I mean, they knew they were still in a movie, but they're reacting genuinely to everything that happens. And as these characters as this weird stuff starts happening, the reactions that they're getting really feel grounded and genuine in the context of them being this group of friends, which is really, I don't know, it really makes it a movie that you can get invested in, which is cool.
Okay.
Of course, it's not like it wasn't like planned, like I in this same interview, actually, the two creators of the movie were developing this movie for like 2 years, just drawing maps and planning out how the movie would actually work. But they just didn't, I don't know, it was just an interesting way of filming it, I guess.
Well, so you said they sort of did it all just in a couple of days? Like, did they basically get the whole movie done in those 5 days or whatever you said?
Yeah, they just filmed over 5 days. I mean, it's a pretty like bodily kind of movie. It takes place mainly in this one house, which is the director's house, it turns out.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it is quite bottled in this one place for sure. I mean, they go outside a little bit, but that's kind of how they managed to film it over 5 days. They just set up the lighting so that it was nighttime, lit for nighttime, and then that's it. They just run it for 5 days and see what they get, I guess. And what they got was a pretty good movie. So I'm recommending it to you. And we can't really talk about it too much more because I don't want to spoil anything, but give it a crack and see how you go. I imagine we'll have a fair amount to talk about in the second part of this episode.
Yeah, we'll make up for it in the second half.
Yeah, so we'll meet back in 2 weeks, and I'll hand us off to Future Reuben right now. Here you go, Future Reuben. Thanks, Past Reuben. Now, before we continue, I would just like to point out that we will be talking about spoilers for Coherence. And like we said in the first part of this episode, in the prescription part, it is a movie that definitely is important to not go into it spoiled. So if you haven't seen Coherence yet, you can pause your podcasting device, and we will be waiting here for you when you get back. Otherwise, let's continue with the show. Yes, so we are back 2 weeks later. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Coherence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I watched it last night.
All right, nice and recent.
Yep. And so I guess the first thing I'll say is, like, I'll go through the plot and everything, but if anybody is listening and they think they might want to watch this, you should probably bail now, because I think Ruben's right. The less you know about this going in, the better.
Yeah. It really made for an awkward first part of the episode, but,
yeah, so we may as well double down now. Yeah, also, okay, anyway, so if you haven't seen the movie, this is probably going to start to ruin it. But, yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a bunch of friends, and they go and have dinner. The 6 of them?
I think it's 8.
6 to 8 friends go and have dinner. And then there's like a comet going over, and through some very loose science fiction reasonings, the comet sort of tears a hole in reality, and sort of exposes all the alternate timelines to each other. So when they leave the house, they're sort of seeing alternate realities that spawned from when their dinner started, which is when the comet arrived. And it's basically just sort of a sci-fi horror movie built around that. So they're constantly running into other versions of themselves and generally causing panic for no reason. But, that's sort of what people do in these situations.
Yeah, so this Coherence subscribes to the every possible choice branches out reality timeline kind of theory, where let's say you flip a coin, if it lands on heads, that's one timeline. If it lands on tails, that's a different timeline. And that applies to every single decision that everyone makes. So obviously there's a huge amount of timelines in this kind of theoretical reality.
Even after a few seconds, with 8 of them in the house, they're all constantly making decisions. And it's sort of slowly revealed. So at first, it kind of seems like there's only 1 or 2 different houses or realities that have been exposed to each other. And then you sort of slowly, they start to realize that it's actually infinite, and most of the characters are no longer in the house they were
correct
originally
reality.
in. And there's lots of good switches and fake outs there.
As the group splits up, it's revealed that each time they go outside the house and come back in, they're going into a completely random reality. And so I think there's only 1 or 2 that are actually from the original reality.
Yeah, well, so 2 of the women never left the house, at least in the realities that we saw.
Yeah.
And so they were still from their original house, but then there were different mixes from the other groups from when they all got split up.
Yeah, and we're following one of the characters who goes out and comes back in to what she thinks is her original reality, but it's revealed that it's not.
And then she just sort of gives up on that, and it's got a nice finish where she sort of wanders around until she finds one where they'd been completely oblivious and they were still happy. So she just kills the version of herself that's there. Well, actually, no, she doesn't manage to kill her. She was really terrible at killing people, which I guess is kind of a compliment in any situation. But
yeah, I think we should talk about the ending a bit because it is a bit of a weird ending. So this main character girl, her group has kind of fallen apart to infighting, and she realizes that this is just like unsalvageable. And so she just leaves and tries to find a reality where people are better. And she finds one where everyone is just happy and basically nothing's happened and they haven't ventured outside or anything. And so she kills the version of herself in there in kind of desperation / not really knowing what to do, and then tries to take her place. But then the next morning, after the comet has passed, we kind of pick up on her again, and the movie ends with her husband, or I think boyfriend, I'm not sure.
It was a little unclear.
Yeah, getting a phone call from the original her. And so it ends with the husband or the boyfriend looking at the phone and being like, it's you. And then it kind of just cuts to black, right?
Yeah, basically. And I thought like one of the things I really liked about this movie were the little clever details. So for instance, the way she gets, like when she wants to murder herself, the way she gets the other, her away from the rest is to break the window in the car, because she remembers that in her reality, when somebody else had broken that window, she'd run off to check her car by herself.
Yeah.
So she was able to count on herself, or on her other self to do that. And so because as soon as she smashes the car window, as the viewer, her whole plan just sort of falls into place without them having to explain it, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I really like about this movie is it is quite intricately planned out.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It presents the clues in such a way that you often figure out what they're realizing as they're realizing it without them needing to like just say it through exposition. Like they often will later, but they have those moments where they're staring at the clue or whatever, and you can sort of be like, oh, like this means that.
Yeah, you're figuring it out as the characters are figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly, and that was really, really cool, and I think that's harder to do than it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things where like a reveal will be obvious or hidden from the characters, and you'll just be shouting at your screen for like in a TV show 1 or 2 episodes just waiting for the ball to drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of have these things be discovered as the characters kind of discover them. It is, I mean, you described it as a horror sci-fi, which I guess is accurate, but it's also quite a mystery. I mean, when the movie starts, we don't really know what's going on. All we know is that there's these weird things like photos of the group with numbers on the back of them that clearly don't make any sense in their reality. And so we almost from the very start, we know that really weird shit is starting to happen.
What I thought was interesting with the box they found at the start, because, then later on they have the idea to make their own box and they sort of realise that they're copying themselves. Who was this first group that made the box so quickly? Like, they really had their shit together.
Should we explain what the box is?
Yeah, well, so once they realise that there's all these realities, they decide that they need a way to identify which one's theirs. So they basically make a box with photos of them and random numbers and random objects that they're meant to be able to use to identify which reality is theirs. And it doesn't really ever seem to have worked at any point in the movie, but various realities keep trying it anyway, so...
Yeah, I mean, it works in the sense that a lot of the people suddenly realize that they are not... The whole twist of the people aren't in their correct reality comes because the main character realizes that the stuff she put in the box originally isn't the same stuff that is in this box.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
I think that was probably the main
that's kind
point
of when the other shoe drops.
Yeah, but I'd be very interested to see the story behind the house where they stole the original box
that
from.
Did the first box.
They
were so ahead of the curve. Yeah. There is one really interesting moment I want to talk about, which is the first kind of thing that they do is once the comet passes over, all the power goes down into the neighborhood. And so 2 people head off to see a house with lights on up the street to try and see if they have a working phone or anything to get in contact with people, right?
Yeah.
And so they give out these glow sticks because all the power's out. They need some form of light. And the host realizes that she has these old glow sticks, a box of blue glow sticks and a box of red glow sticks that are lying around her house.
And a green
she
one.
gives the group She doesn't have the green ones though. She only has blue ones and red ones, right?
No, they had green as well. There was like a
Oh,
third
did
color
they?
that comes in right at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, but the host in the original reality doesn't have green, right? She just has blue and red.
Oh, maybe.
You've kind of spoiled the moment a little bit.
Anyway,
But so the host asks if they want blue or red, and they choose blue, and so they give out these blue glow sticks. And as they're kind of going to this other house, they see another group with red glow sticks, and this kind of sets up a us versus them mentality, right?
Yeah.
And so this kind of plays into the whole. At the start, you only think that there's one other reality, their house and the house down the street, which is them, but with red glow sticks, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, you see green glow sticks, and it just drops this thing like, oh, fuck, this is way bigger than you realized, which is, I think, is a really cool moment from the movie, which I guess you didn't really get because you thought they had green glow sticks the whole way through.
I mean, it still sort of has the same idea, because it still shows that there's a third one, which implies that there's probably lots.
More, yeah.
But yeah. No, I confused myself a little bit in the movie because I guess having watched stuff like Primer, and other sort of mind bending movies, I was just constantly waiting for this thing where it like there was going to be a twist at the end of a scene that we'd actually been with a different set. Like, so you know how we sort of the whole movie follows the one girl. I forget her name already. The blonde
you only
girl.
watched it last night. I have a reason for forgetting her name. You should know her name.
The blonde girl. It sort of follows her, but I kept waiting for a scene that would finish with it suddenly revealing that we'd been watching a different group. So I was entering most scenes with that mentality to be ready for that, and I think I actually confused myself more by trying to outsmart the movie and preempt that twist.
Yeah, that never really happens.
No, it didn't, but I constantly was waiting for it to happen and thought I was being clever by not trying to pick up on any discrepancies.
You were trying to out clever yourself in the movie.
Yeah, I did. It didn't work at all.
We follow the same one instance of this character throughout the whole thing, but she does kind of pop in and out of various groups, which is kind of revealed. So I guess you kind of get that, but not really.
Yeah.
Not to this degree where you think you've been watching one character and it's suddenly another character.
No, yeah, they don't swap them out like I was expecting. And for a while I thought it was going to be time travel shenanigans because the whole movie has a very sort of claustrophobic camera style.
Yeah.
Which like I think a lot of indie films tend to sort of use.
Yeah, it's very intimate, I would describe it as.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. And it actually kind of reminded me of a film I watched 5 or 6 years ago called Triangle.
Okay.
Which if you like this film, is probably worth seeing. And I actually, when I went to the IMDb page for Coherence last night, it was like, if you like this, you will also like Triangle. And I was like, hey, yeah, I did.
Give me the cliff notes on Triangle.
It's a very similar idea. There's a woman. And she sort of goes out to hang out on a boat with some of her friends, and then science fiction shenanigans ensue, and that's pretty much all I want to say.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, it was quite similar in both style and sort of plot to Coherence, just using a different sci-fi angle.
Yeah, fair enough. Time travel, I'm assuming, from what you said before.
Yeah, so basically it has like some time travel stuff in it, which... so I was constantly, because Coherence reminded me of it, I was waiting for time travel stuff for ages, and then it became the alternate reality stuff, and that really caught me off guard, which was cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you go into a sci-fi movie, you basically almost always expect time travel to be the kind of mindfuckery that's coming in.
Yeah, well, and especially since Primer.
Since Primer, exactly.
Recovered from that.
So I haven't recovered from those boxes. All right, so... Do you have anything more to say, or should we jump into our ratings?
Well, I guess, it was interesting because, I'd forgotten when I watched it, the stuff you mentioned about how they made it in the first part of this episode. And I'm just sort of thinking on that now. It's actually makes it kind of cool that they sort of managed to achieve it with sort of no script and just having actors, figure out their characters and stuff rather than just reading.
I was wondering if mentioning that would have kind of changed your experience of how you saw it, but you said you forgot when you were watching?
Yeah, I did.
All right, so I guess that experiment didn't work.
No, the only thing I noticed was the guy who played the drunkard. I think his name was Mike. He was one of the main characters in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like the actor. That was as far as anything I noticed, because I think everyone else is pretty much a no name. Like they're all just.
You're expecting the twist to be that they were all vampires.
Yeah, they're all suddenly vampires, and that reality didn't pop into the movie, but it would have been a nice twist.
The vampire reality. They're saving that for Coherence too, where they go to all the different themed realities. So going back to what you said, I think there is something to say where it's kind of impressive that they made it in such an improvisational way, because it is so like meticulously planned of a movie that it is quite impressive that they just kind of improvised it together.
And I mean, but yeah, because I thought, as I was watching it, I thought the acting was quite good, because it sort of did actually seem like they were friends who'd grown up together and weren't seeing each other as much these days.
Yeah, they have this chemistry of like a friend group who clearly have known each other for a long time, but there's a bit of tension between some of them, and there's these outliers to the group and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and that sort of came across really well, and so I guess I wonder if the improvisational style, would help lots of other movies with that, or whether this was just sort of the right people
to build a stronger chemistry between the actors.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, from the sense I got when I was researching, I think the director just picked some of the people that actors that he knew. So I don't know if they all knew each other already, or if it was just because of that improvisational style. But it definitely would have helped, I reckon. Anyway, let's go into your review, your final thoughts.
Yeah. Final thoughts. It was good. You heard it here first.
You're not gonna pan it like you were threatening to do.
No. It was good. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it's like my favorite science fiction movie or anything, but it's definitely good. Like I'd still probably give it a 7.5, an 8 out of 10.
All right, I can live with that.
Like I'd bring it up to groups of people depending on the vibe of the room, if people are sort of into that kind of movie, because I think it's an intense film, so you'd want people to be in the right headspace to sort of go into it. It's not just
I guess I'm a fan of those kind of like mindfucky style movies, and this is the one that I feel like has actually mindfucked me the most when I watched it. Like the twists aren't too obvious, and the way the characters act and everything works is realistic enough that it actually mindfucked me in a way that probably no other movie has really done, except maybe Shutter Island. I don't know.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. The twists, I very much got the impression I was picking the twists as I was meant to. There was never really a point where I felt like I saw them coming, except maybe the one when the blonde girl first left to start looking for a reality to kill herself. Like, I think that was maybe the only one I picked up about 30 seconds before I was meant to. But everything else, it was like, it was very clear. It was like they wanted the shoe to drop at that moment.
Yeah. Which I guess speaks to their skill as filmmakers. But anyway, now that you've given your rating 8 out of 10, I think it was 7.5 to 8. All right, so that's pretty good. I can live with that as a rating for a movie that I hold quite dear. I'm glad it wasn't any lower. Thanks for listening to another episode of Media MD. If you want to get in contact with us and tell us how all our opinions on that were incorrect, then you can do so at mediamdpodcast.com, which is our website, or by emailing us at mediamdpodcast@gmail.com, or by Twitter or Facebook or whatever else. Just go to the website. It's all there.
Yeah.
So next week we will be taking a look at the TV show Westworld. So check that out in advance if you want to be spoiler-free. We'll see you in 2 weeks.